A very warm evening to one and all present here. The most awaited event of eSummit is here. E-Talks are here. The first, the first e-talk session by Mr. Barry Howard Minkin is here. If there is one thing in the world that cannot be labeled with a price, then it must be a good advice, especially if it comes from a stalwart with over several decades of experience as a global management consultant, including 10 years with Stanford Research Institute. This eSummit, EDC is proud to present Mr. Barry Howard Minkin, a futurist, professional speaker, and best-selling author, and one of the best global management consultants in the world. His insights into the company-specific factors that determine success in the real world have allowed him to accurately develop market forecasts and strategies for his clients. And we are honored to have him here as we discuss global future trends and his experience over the past 5 decades. We welcome Mr. Barry Howard Minkin.
Good morning, India. It's a pleasure for me to participate in your Summit 2021. And my special welcome to you aspiring entrepreneurs and your mentors for the important work that you do. Today I want to especially thank Devansh for making all of this possible. Since ancient times, people have been trying to profit from prophecy. Even today in India, astrologers, numerologists, tarot card and palm readers earn hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Seems like predicting the future is a good business. But how do we know what is even happening today, much less what will happen in the future? The news describes today's accelerating events with a 24-hour haphazard barrage of people, places, facts, and events. But without a framework to place this data, we experience it as nothing more than random sound bites. But what's happening today is neither random nor independent. This morning, I'm going to explain some of the clear patterns underlying all of this confusion in order to provide you a global perspective of your future. And I'm not going to be talking about a distant future that we can blissfully ignore. I'm talking about an imminent future, a future that's in sight. There's an old Eskimo proverb that goes, only the lead dog sees the landscape. So it is with business, government, and individuals, those that have the keen eyes to see the trends and the fast feet to react, enjoy a strategic advantage over others. So sit back and let me try to place some of the big pieces of the future puzzle. We have a little technical glitch here. Hold on for a second. There we go. To predict the future and help people with strategic planning and to develop a strategic plan, one of the first things we need to do is have an idea of how the future is going to impact that particular business. And what we do is something called an environmental scan. We look at things that will likely impact the future. I have several that I call bring in the usual suspects, things that I will always be looking at. I look at demographics, things like age and population, how the global economy and globalization will impact that particular business. What about the role of the key players, multinational corporations, social media, NGOs. They also look at what's happening in my country as far as governance and policies, as well as international governance and policies. Have to be concerned of areas of future conflict. What about the effect of natural resources and the environment on my planning? And how will science and technology impact me? These are important things to know. So another thing that is fairly consistent is how fast growth and change is happening. In past decades, I was able to make predictions and I'd be 5 years ahead of people. But now we get all our information so quickly that things are happening much faster. So the bottom line on this curve is what we see is a linear line, the way things were, straight and predictable. But what's happened in the past decades is exponential growth, explosive growth. You reach a point and what we call the knee of the curve and things just take off. And we're not prepared for how fast this is happening. And this is going to be a very difficult problem for entrepreneurs to deal with, this fast change. Here's a good example. If we look at this slide of population growth, we see that exponential curve we talked about. But what we're looking at is population growth from 1950 to 2100 in the developing world. 95%, that's the point, 95% of this growth is happening in the developing world. If we had another line on the bottom, that linear growth, that straight line growth, that slow growth, that's what's happening in the developed world. We futurists love to throw around statistics. I can tell you in the year 2000, the global population was 6.1 billion. Today it's 7.9 billion. In 2050, it will be 10 billion. In 2100, it'll be 11.2 billion. But let me give those so what statistics some meaning. It took 4 million years for the Earth population to reach 2 billion. In just 70 years, that number has tripled. Let me give that again. Let's look at it another way. Every year, the population of the globe grows the equivalent of the population of Italy, and will do so from now to 2050. And again, the point that most of this population is happening in the developed world. Actually, it's happening in a very small area. Take a look at this. Your neighborhood, which you know, India and China and Indonesia, has so many people. There are more people living inside that circle than outside. And as entrepreneurs, this population in a small area has a lot of meaning. And let's look at just some of the factors that happen due to this concentrated population growth in one area of the world. One thing that happens is we're moving, we're changing places. Migration and ethnic shifts, people moving from rural areas to urban areas, people moving from rich to poor areas. And this is fueled by economic and physical security mostly. Indeed, you are experiencing the largest migration in the history of the world. Just in China alone, 98 million people moved from rural to urban areas. Another 80 million people split fairly evenly between Europe and North America and Asia are migrating as well. And the big reason for the migration in this area, this developing world needs 1 billion jobs in these developing countries. So people are moving. Already in more than 50 countries, more than 15% of the citizens are now alien to that country. But you should know this very well. Indian movement into the US. In the continental US states, over 40% of the states have native-born Indians as their #1 immigrant population. And so you know this movement and you've seen it happening. Another impact, follow the logic. You have all of these people in a small area, you're going to get urban sprawl. Already 52% of the world lives in urban populations. That number will move to 66% in 2030 and 68% by 2050. And so what is happening, you get all of this pushed together, condensed, you have to build up. And you get mega cities of over 10 million people. I lived in 1950 in one of them, which the only one was New York. By 1980, there were 2. Today, there are 43 of these cities already, 37 of them in developing countries. So again, when you push it up, and again, you have to build higher. You start building skyscrapers like this 100-story Burj Khalifa in Dubai. Indeed, Dubai has now 7 of the 10 most largest buildings in the world. Those are the lucky ones. Unfortunately, 1 billion people live in poverty in shanty towns such as this in Africa. And it's likely to develop to be 2 billion by 2030 if no action is taken. But these slums are hotbeds of entrepreneurship. Here's an example. Here's somebody using scrap wood, and he's making furniture as well as coffins. The entrepreneurs, to survive, these people have to be entrepreneurs, and they're good ones at that. Let's have some fun. Let's say that we have 100 people out there in the room, and you're going to represent the population of the world now as it is. What we would have is more than half of you would come from Asia, and a third of you would be Indian or Chinese. 16 of you would come from Africa. 13 of those of you people would come from sub-Saharan Africa. Also, 13 would come from the whole Western Hemisphere. Only 4 people from the US. 7 would come from Eastern Europe, including the Soviet Union. 5 from Western Europe, and 3 people from the Mideast. All of these factors start to give you pieces of a puzzle and lend itself to opportunity. So in each of these things, think of some of the opportunities or threats they present to you. Another important factor is age. What we're looking at, if you look at the top map, the red represents regions where over 60% of the population are under 30. And we see that change. So we've never been younger, and we never will be younger. If you look at 2025, we notice this movement down toward from the red to pink, light blue, and finally to dark blue, which is hard to see. But if you look at Europe, some places in Europe, Japan, the populations of the dark blue have less than 30% of that population are under 30. And this is a cause for concern. This aging population is making for a demographic fall off that is impacting all of the developed world besides the US. The US isn't as impacted. But for example, in 2010, globally, there were 4 working adults for every senior. By 2025, that number will go down to 3 working people for every senior. And the problem is particularly difficult in Japan. They had their one-child policy and some early retirements. And so they're starting to have problems with their workforce, which will have a lot of economic implications. Japan, the problem has been bad since 1995. And by 2025, there'll only be 2 working adults for every senior. And that's an equation that doesn't compute well. Let's take a look at the wealth of the world. The green represents regions and countries where the average adult earns between $50,000 to over $500,000 a year. We notice the peach and the orange, where India is. That's in the area of $5,000 to $49,000 per year. And then we have the reds and the purples, people who are earning less than $5,000 per year. Some of the implications: a sense of class warfare due to income inequality and race relations. This is a concern I have that is going on. I haven't seen or heard anything like it since the Great Depression or the days of Karl Marx. We are a divided world and angry about it. Governance, some bad decisions are being made. And one of them is this recent COVID relief bill of close to $2 trillion by the US government at this point. Let me, again, $2 trillion, let me give that some perspective so you can internalize. It's important for you to do so. If we stacked up $1 million with $100 bills, it would be about the height of a chair. If we stacked $1 billion with $100 bills, it would reach higher than the Burj Khalifa, that tallest building I told you. But now we're talking about something, we're talking $1 trillion. When you talk $1 trillion, that is 2.5 times the height of the International Space Station if I piled $100 bills, 2.5 times. And what are we talking about now? We're talking about, in our government, talking about an infrastructure of a bill of another $3 trillion, and perhaps forgiving student debt, which is another $1.5 trillion. What this has done is put the US, at least, in a very precarious situation. When 77% of international borrowing to GDP is considered the alarm going off. Russia has 19%. China is about 56%. Let me see, India is about 72%, so there's a concern there as well. But so what we've done is made money almost worthless, and certain billionaires are realizing that, and they're going out and buying land like crazy. Another concern to me is as far as the environment is fresh water. 72% of fresh water is used for agriculture. 40% of all land to irrigate grain, 40% of fresh water is used to irrigate grain. And so a shortage of fresh water means a shortage equals a shortage of food. It takes 1,000 tons of water to produce 1 ton of grain. And the US exports 90 million tons of grain, which is the equivalent to 90 billion tons of water. So what the US is exporting with its grain to countries like yours is we're exporting water, and exporting a lot of it. So 90 billion tons of water, to give it some perspective, the Missouri River Basin, which is one of our largest, produces 62 billion tons of water each year. And this is a serious problem, particularly in India, where the water tables have been falling 3 to 10 feet in some places. So this is a good opportunity for entrepreneurs as well to see what a way of solving this problem and the rest of the major pollution problems. With basically borderless countries and labor markets fairly seamless, we've got an overabundance of well-educated, low-cost labor. And countries to get ahead and people to get ahead are going to need higher education. That is going to be the key for which countries move forward. But India and China, to their credit, have made some of those investments and are starting to enjoy the seeds of that work, the fruit of that work. Also, wherever there's an opportunity to outsource, people are going to take it. It's already in the US, lawyers are outsourcing typing. Radiological systems are being sent out to be reviewed in India and Australia. So that's another factor that's going to be, as long as the borders stay open, there's going to be a movement to lower prices for services. As far as technology, 3 of the hottest that I like: the Internet of Things, which is basically putting software and sensors on various things and places to get feedback that can go over the internet, nanotechnology, and 3D printing. This is interesting. When this is a couple of years before I started in SRI, this is what the global internet looked like. As you see, there are 4 spots on that at that time. Talk about exponential growth. Today, over half the world, 58%, are online and on the internet. Well, when we're talking about nanotechnology, we're getting to some points beyond human comprehension. We're talking about nano is 6 carbon atoms wide, or put it another way, 1/10,000th of a human hair. And we're also then talking atto, which is a billionth of a nano. What you're looking at in this slide is a nanotube, already called one of the most versatile materials ever discovered. It's 100 times stronger than steel and 1/6 as dense. It is could be a replacement, or it's a better conductor than copper for electricity, and can be used as a substitute for silicon to make chips. People have thought of using it to build cables that can take payloads to the space station, or to make computers as small as human cells. And then they talk about smart dust, which is way out in the future. But think of a cloud of nanoparticles floating over a field and able to tell things about the air volume over that field, the temperature, the humidity, and all of these things to help raise crops. And the military sees these particles floating around and being advanced scouts in warfare. But another important piece is what we call 3D or additive printing, which gives us the opportunity to make quality items with quantities as small as a single unit. And you can use thousands of materials, ceramics, metals, to name a couple. And they are being used. This technology is taking off. What you're looking at here is a building in Dubai that was built entirely with a 3D printer and 3 people operating that printer. And it's a 2,600 square foot building. So there are opportunities. And hopefully some of your high-tech people are interested. But let me take your questions at the moment, and some fast ideas as to what they are. Okay, question number 1 was, in the future, what types of technologies will be the vitamin and similarly painkillers to mankind? I think I've mentioned some of the painkillers. I like the Internet of Things. I like, of course, additive manufacturing, I think will be a major breakthrough. And I think biotech will be important and actually give us some of the painkillers that we're talking about. As far as the vitamins, things that are nice, but that we don't necessarily need. How about drones performing fireworks? Fireworks is $1 billion industry. It's amazing some of the displays that can be now done by drones, but they're not essential. Automated cars are another technology that are going to be important. But as far as countries, before they get into it, I don't know if it's more of I think it's more of a vitamin than a painkiller. Is this pet? Okay, let's for daily life. I think again, biotech will be a painkiller. Water technology, as I mentioned before, and the internet, IoT. As far as a vitamin, I think chatbots that interact with people in human ways is poised for growth, but maybe not what we had called the painkillers, the things you have to have rather than the things you'd like to have. Okay, the question: in a densely populated country like India with limited opportunities, how do I smart the others as an amateur entrepreneur. First, I have to say I empathize. I think you're going to have to be some of the best entrepreneurs we've ever had, because as I mentioned, the world has become extremely competitive, and I'm seeing a slight trend upwards in global unemployment over the past year or so that concerns me. But the key is somehow you have to, again, stay ahead of the curve. Ask yourself, for instance, who else, what other country has solved a problem that has not been solved in your country? You know, copy from some other countries, some expertise. Ask yourself, if you woke up and everything had to be done differently than it normally has, envision what that world would be. How would you do everything you do a little bit differently and perhaps more effectively? These are, some of the kinds of questions, and understand innovation search is a good area, and understanding some of that, which could perhaps be another talk we get into. Okay, let's, which industries, according to you, will be the most important in the coming years as far as important in the world? And what about your industry, the semiconductor industry? Will that be one of them? And yes, I think semiconductors will be an enabler that cuts through many digital devices that are happening. I see it with it's needed for autonomous driving, AI, 5G, Internet of Things, and people are spending money in R&D in that area. But you have to be concerned in India that the bulk of this action is happening in East Asia and East Asian countries, China, Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea. So this is where most of this will continue to happen. But you're in a good industry. Which industry sectors are in dire need of help? Manufacturing, they're going to lose thousands of jobs, and using these opportunities for IoT, of course, in the manufacturing areas. Administration, of course, and clerical jobs and industries are going to suffer. I think education could be done much differently and better, and people have to reevaluate the value of education, and those are in areas that need innovation. Also, the cable industry, with places like Apple TV, Hulu, Amazon, and Amazon Prime. People aren't buying the bundles. Also, there's cheaper connectivity all over. So those are some of the industries that are going to suffer. And finally, we've asked as a nonprofit enterprise cell, how do you improve your elevator pitch? I took a shot at an elevator pitch that if I could, I'll read to you. Millennial entrepreneurs don't have to choose between getting a degree and starting a business. In fact, you're more likely to succeed as an entrepreneur if you launch your next idea inside a university-located incubator. Many studies show that university incubated business created more jobs and generated more sales than those incubated elsewhere. NIT students get customized, intensive coaching and mentoring, network opportunities, and even a chance to pitch to investors. How about you, investor? With the possibility of a great return on your investment, we invite you as a founding sponsor of EDC's Innovation Challenge, where students can win funding money for a great idea, and you get the opportunity to get in as an early stage investor. Just an additional word, some things. I did some studies on research, corporate research parks connected with university or research parks. It's good to get top corporations like the idea and help create these parks. These parks have shown measurable growth even in recessionary times, and they are certainly important for the region and the country, and should get major government funding. I think that's essential, and I support that. Well, as we say, we've got to cancel something here. And as Yogi Berra, one of our comic baseball players, said, and I agree, the future ain't what it used to be. Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. And we hope to again talk soon. Goodbye. Kat?
That was an amazing session. We hope everyone enjoyed it. It was truly insightful. Thank you all for joining. Our next e-talk will be with none other than Farhad Asadwala. Join us at 8 p.m.